So I was watching an absolute masterpiece of a video by Eldana Doublecast the other day about what seems like one of the greatest frauds ever perpetrated on internet fandom. This grift has everything. Sock puppet troll accounts, obviously fake clout stories, intense coveting of mod privileges, and the decentralized Harry Potter fanfiction scene of the early internet. And at the end, when the creator was reflecting on how far it had all gone, how many hours must have been sunk into it, and how many internet communities were rattled by its aftershocks, he remarked that nothing of this scale had really happened since. And I agreed. I mean, the Rose Christo saga was certainly as wild, and though it happened very quickly, it piggybacked on drama that had been building for a solid decade. But it's an attempted scam that fell flat on its face, and we laughed. Where are the success stories? Certainly not DashCon, am I right? But nothing I just mentioned got someone fired from their job. Where were the IRL consequences? And then I remembered. Buzzy! Our boy is still out there, scared and alone. Now this eclipses Ms. Scribe, because this crime has everything. Childhood nostalgia, abandoned locations, rebellious cast members, and a massive company failing to stop a one-sided war waged by an ex-employee. Plus, needlessly dramatic arrest video. Strap in! January 2007. The Wonders of Life Pavilion in Epcot closes after reopening seasonally for the holidays as it did every year. Little did the public know that this time it would never reopen again. It had been limping along on its last legs for a while, as all pavilions who lose their corporate sponsor do. See, if a sponsorship gets cancelled, Disney hasn't budgeted the full amount to maintain the pavilion, so repairs don't get done, and the place starts to look run down, so it loses popularity. So management says, well, why would we spend money on something the guests don't like anyway, and they just sort of let it die on full public display. Of course, there were still fans. The pavilion had 2 quality attractions, and one of them was a really popular ride in its day. Body Wars was a motion simulator ride that, well, you know Star Tours? Okay, so imagine Star Tours, but instead of taking you through the Star Wars chronology, it instead took you through that Magic School Bus episode where they go inside Ralphie. That's it, that's Body Wars. And it was around before there was a Star Tours in Florida, so it was really popular when it opened. But it had a problem. Not a big one, and not a unique one, but...
What I'm trying to say is this ride made people very sick. I'm pretty sure if you took a team of scientists and locked them in a room and tasked them with creating some kind of sadistic make humans sick device, they would just be like, we did it. It's called Body Wars.
So yeah, that hurt its popularity among the weak stomach demographic. But the Wonders of Life had something for them too. The other attraction was a show called Cranium Command. The premise of Cranium Command is that the brain is like the military, and today, nervous new recruit Buzzy gets his first mission. You get to watch as he spends a day controlling the mind of a 12-year-old. Which, come on, it's his first day on the job. Start him off with, like, a well-adjusted adult or a complacent toddler. Don't throw him in the deep end of a middle schooler's mind. Yikes. But yes, you are correct. Pete Docter was an animator for Cranium Command and cited it as one of his inspirations for Inside Out. But no matter how good the show was, it just didn't have the same draw as a ride. So when it got outdone by its cooler twin, fewer people bothered to go to the Wonders of Life Pavilion at all. This was the beginning of the end. But losing its sponsor was the end of the end. So it wasn't a huge surprise when it closed in 2007. But that didn't mean fans gave up hope. There were constant rumors about a seasonal reopening or a special event. There's one story that the designers used the Body Wars Theater to test out the new Star Tours footage in 2011. But it can be assumed that after that, the ride vehicles have been treated as spare parts for Star Tours, as they were removed from their hangars around 2014. The ride has never reopened. But that doesn't mean the building didn't. It has been used as demonstration space for the Food and Wine Festival, with all the signage taken down and the cool abandoned stuff walled off as per Epcot policy. But another way the building attracted visitors throughout the year was as an easily accessible abandoned place. People love abandoned Disney stuff, and really anything remotely dark about Disney. My theory is that they know the aggressive veneer of perfection is really paper thin, so they just want to scratch at it, but that's a tangent. Whatever it is, people love sneaking into Disney's abandoned stuff, and Wonders of Life was a really easy mark. You could get right up to it legally, sometimes inside of it if you came at the right time of year, but security was apparently pretty lax. And there was very little danger since it was only abandoned part-time. No mold, no rot, no falling through the floorboards. And even if you got caught, Disney wouldn't want to make a big scene about it. You'd just get told off and sent back out to ride mission space. It was almost entrapment, given that this happened to coincide with the rise of trespassing for YouTube views, often abbreviated to Urbex. It's one of those rare places that might have become more famous after it closed. And people were apparently in there all the time, as we found out later on when the community needed anyone with information to come forward. Most of the people breaking in were already part of the community, just Disney fans getting a look at forbidden stuff. There are plenty of Twitter accounts run by cast members just to let fans see some backstage stuff. And I bet Disney doesn't like it, but cracking down on this would be a really bad look, and it's honestly harmless. Just cast members and fans mutually loving Disney parks. But there was one who was different. Backdoor Disney was another Twitter account posting behind-the-scenes photos that could only have been taken by a cast member. But he pretty quickly set himself apart from the crowd with his unique antagonism. I stumbled across his Twitter account at one point, being in the Disney Parks fan sphere and all, and he immediately rubbed me the wrong way, as his posting did not seem to be done with the same good intent as others who just wanted to share some secrets. Clearly there are people who would brand any sharing of secrets as a breach of trust, but this guy went farther than most. It's hard to piece it all together, shout out to Backdoor Disney Archives on Twitter, but I swear I remember him having to make other accounts when the main one got taken down or suspended or something. I can only find emptied out ghosts of proof at this point, but I seem to remember him using it to play up the personal narrative he crafted around himself. I didn't pay much attention at the time, just wrote him off as a petulant trespasser with a bit of an anti-hero complex. He started tweeting all this stuff referencing his stealth crew and his identity being compromised and how they were after him, and dude, I'm just as prone to putting too much importance on theme parks as anyone, probably more, and I don't know how to tell you this. You're taking pictures of roller coaster maintenance areas, not training to blow up the Death Star. I'm sure he would have gotten in trouble if he was caught trespassing, but the story was that he wasn't a cast member anymore, and pictures were being sent to him by old CM friends. I'm sure he was also trespassing too, but like I said, Disney had not taken a very firm hand with trespassers. It would make them look bad, and no real damage had been done. I guess they weren't having a big problem with souvenir hunting by these amateur explorers. I mean, what were these fans gonna do? Steal a 300-pound metal child off his 15-foot high perch? Now we have to begin establishing the timeline with the help of anyone who'd been in the building for business or pleasure. Sometime around 2017, Buzzy was tagged to be moved to the Disney archives. This is where stuff goes when it's taken out of the parks, but it's too important to be scrapped for parts. They have a whole setup at D23 every year, it's so cool. Also around this time, Imagineers were seen touring the building and speculation of a special event before archiving swirls. This sequence of events makes a whole lot of sense now that Disney has announced they're fully transforming the building into the Play Pavilion. But we didn't know that yet, and the next time someone breaks in, Buzzy has gotten a makeover. New clothes, new paint job, the works. This was all very exciting for Buzzy's fans. But what they didn't know at the time was that it was because his clothes were stolen in August of 2018, and the rest of him was soon to follow. In November of 2018, Buzzy disappeared. Details are murky, but as best as the Orange County cops can tell, his hydraulic lines were cut with fluids still in them. Not only that, but the lines were still pressurized when they were cut, so hydraulic fluid spewed all over the auditorium. But this grisly crime scene lacks a body. So who has our boy? At this stage, it can be assumed that an internal investigation was in full swing. After all, cast members had the easiest access to the building, and the vast majority of kidnappings are committed by family members. They clearly wanted to keep this all quiet in case he was returned quickly. But a week after he was found missing, Disney filed a theft report with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. So the cops questioned the last place hacker that could be placed at the scene of the crime. Backdoor Disney. His name is Patrick, but the questioning in November of 2018 makes him the first person outside of Disney to learn of the kidnapping, and the first to leak it. On December 21st of 2018, Shock Marissa tweeted a picture of Buzzy and announced that he was stolen, bringing the case to the attention of all of Disnerddom. When asked how she knew, she said she heard it from Dreamfinder Guy, who tweeted on the subject a few hours after Marissa and said he heard it from Patrick. And now that it was public knowledge, the theorizing could begin. When Marissa proclaimed Buzzy stolen, a lot of people immediately asked, "How do you know? Can you be sure? How would you even steal something that big and get it out of the parks? Are you sure he didn't just get removed? Wait, he was tagged for the archives? He must just be there and they forgot to tell operations or maintenance or something." A lot of people have figured the most likely scenario was that this was all the result of some sort of communication breakdown. Buzzy was removed by Disney, but some employee missed the memo and immediately panicked upon finding our boy gone. Now, I'm no 300-pound metal child expert, but I thought from the very beginning that removing Buzzy through official channels would probably require approval by executives, and probably Imagineering too, and a whole lot of help from maintenance. He's a big boy. He requires interdepartmental cooperation to move. So who's left who'd be in the Cranium Command Theater frequently, not know this was happening, and be so sure this was a heist that they called the police without talking to their boss? How could their boss not know? Something just didn't fit about this theory, but it was really popular for a while. There were even people claiming that they had proof that Buzzy had been found in an E.P.C.O.T warehouse, so I guess I was wrong and it was all just a misunderstanding. But the thing I couldn't quite forget was the state of the theater. No way would Disney pull a hack job like this and leave such a messy crime scene. They know how to disconnect their own animatronics. And if something somehow went wrong with the hydraulic lines not releasing and they decided to just cut it, Disney employees would know to depressurize the hose before sawing into it. It all seems so amateur and spur of the moment. And of course, the "it was all a big misunderstanding" theory falls apart under knowledge we have now but didn't then. Disney waited a week to call the cops. That's too long for a misunderstanding to go uncorrected and still be acted upon. I can believe that if this happened, Disney would not want to admit to accidentally calling the cops over an internal goof, but the goof doesn't add up. If you were only in Cranium Command once a week, wouldn't you ask your boss, Bob? Did we, move the boy without telling me? Are the animatronics alive, Bob? While this handwave theory was swirling, there was another version of it that was slightly darker. Of course Disney moved the boy. They're the ones with the tools to do so. But the reason he was reported stolen wasn't an improbable breakdown of communication. Disney hid the boy to frame Patrick. Imagine you're a gigantic company who's dealing with increasingly bold trespassers. They're in your business, they're sharing pictures of stuff that's supposed to be off limits, which just encourages copycats, and it might become dangerous if one of them falls in the Buzzy pit trying to get that money shot. You want to stop them, but you don't want to look like a jerk. And you can't turn your park into a police state. People would hate it, and the bag check is already so annoying. So you see this one guy who's not just posting pictures from behind the curtain. He's rubbing his butt on the curtain. It's one thing to stroll into restricted areas and make your security look like a joke, but to revel in the fact that you have not stopped him and openly position himself in defiance of you? What if we just make an example out of this one? What if something were to go missing from somewhere he just posted pictures of himself illegally going right after he was there? Then we have an excuse to send the sheriff after him. We won't arrest him or anything, just have him subjected to questioning and tell the cops there's evidence on his phones that he broke into the scene of the crime. That part's even true. They'll search his house for stolen items, get all up in his business, see how he likes it, and then take those phones that he uses to commit his crimes to look for evidence. He won't like that at all, and maybe it'll scare him straight and make teenagers think twice about messing with the mouse. Now, in hindsight, it feels ridiculous that we ever considered that the Orange County Sheriff's Department might be doing Disney's dirty work. I'm not saying cops have never been bought. I'm just saying Disney wouldn't need to manufacture a crime against this guy. 1, his hobby is trespassing. And 2, he's just this guy. He had a kind of popular Twitter and companion YouTube channel, and that's about it. I remember watching this go down in real time and thinking how much worse the bad PR of committing fraud and filing a false report to manipulate a sheriff's department would be if they were caught doing that than one guy posting pictures of the reservoir where they drained Splash Mountain could ever hope to be. But I still wasn't as suspicious as I should have been. Quite honestly, we all should have been suspicious that this theory where an evil corporation was pressing its jackboot down on Patrick was mostly fueled by Patrick. And once his house was searched, he fueled it hard. He posted this video about his experience where he called Disney out for targeting him and getting his phones taken in retaliation for running Backdoor Disney. And he laid it on thick. Later it was discovered that he altered his pictures of the search warrant to exclude the stolen items that were subsequently found in his possession. He dramatically ended the video by declaring that it would be a while before he went back to any Disney parks. because they badly wanted you on their property. That's not a threat, that's an early Christmas gift. And then, in a move I remember being showered in praise by the comment section, he finished his monologue and panned the camera around to reveal he was in Universal. Savage indeed. Park security, I have a threat to report. I really intended to leave more suspense going into our final theory, but no, he very obviously did it. In the immediate reaction to the first tweet, people were already calling inside job on this one, as the mark would have taken several people to lift and be really difficult to sneak out. The classic dress as a janitor and wheel him out in a giant plastic trash can gambit doesn't even work in Disney, as that's not how their trash is collected. And if we're impersonating people anyway, pose as a food and wine vendor and drive your car right up to the building. There are varying reports on how easy that would be, but people very quickly leaned towards this kidnapping not being possible for the average park visitor. The cast members would of course be the primary suspects of management too, so a lot of investigation was probably done there. If it was someone who still worked there, they'd be sweating. But what if it was a former cast member? Perhaps the very first suspect who already had a proven history of impersonating employees and stealing stuff from backstage areas? Though I will admit, he played the victim quite convincingly to his audience. And this happened to be right around the time we had all just learned some rather villainous things about Disney, so people were sort of already primed to believe they would do something like framing a guy for theft because they didn't like his Twitter. But you don't need to frame a window. It does that by itself. Not long after his video, authorities took Patrick into custody. Those phones they had taken to search for evidence held pictures of his cousin's girlfriend wearing a dress that had been reported missing from the Haunted Mansion ballroom scene, and a backpack with Buzzy's clothes in it in the back seat of his car. It's hard to piece together, but I'm pretty sure he stole Buzzy's hat and jacket in August, and then they replaced the clothes, and then he stole the whole Buzzy. People correctly guessed that the hat and jacket were the $8,000 worth of stolen items they recovered from the guy who bought them. So don't worry, all you YouTube commenters concerned that Buzzy's out there naked and afraid. Wherever our boy is, he's warm. He's got bigger problems, but he's warm. Once he had the goods, Patrick got to selling.
See how I do it.
He went to eBay and posed as someone who was very close to Imagineering and therefore totally allowed to be selling unbelievably rare Disney items online. And one of the people who fell for it was NBA player Robin Lopez. He and one of his friends who are Disney superfans both bought stolen items from Patrick. But superfans are actually the best possible scenario for who these got sold to. It has been confirmed that Lopez returned the hat and jacket when the police informed him that they were stolen and is being treated as a victim in all of this. Hopefully all the contraband that gets sold will end up with superfans who are likely to give it back out of love of the parks. A quick thing to note here is that Lopez's friend claims he also saw Buzzy's headset in Patrick's trunk when the deal went down, even though it was not one of the items handed over that day. When the sheriff's department searched Patrick's phones, they found pictures of him with multiple stolen goods. I guess creating photographic evidence of his crimes was just second nature by this point. They had proof that Patrick and his cousin had Buzzy's hat and jacket, the Haunted Mansion dress and tiara, and several wigs. But there was still no proof that he stole Buzzy, though this should really count as a confession. Warning for the weak stomach demographic.
I felt your eyes, lads!
On May 12th, 2019, the Backdoor Disney account posted this. And there has been a lot of speculation about whether this is, in fact, Buzzy's severed face, or rather an unused face mold someone found some other way. There are genuinely still people saying he's being framed by Disney. And yes, even though this was posted 5 days before his arrest, the Backdoor Disney Twitter account was no longer run by Spikes. And yes, it posted pictures sent in by anyone who could get a cool enough shot. But if the guy you took over a Twitter account from was under investigation for killing Mr. Body, you wouldn't post any picture of a gruesome mask of Mr. Body's face, even if he was innocent. Even if you knew Mr. Body was alive and well and living in Paris. It's just the wrong look. Patrick was only brought up on charges regarding the Haunted Mansion theft and pled guilty, serving 10 months of probation. He was also officially banned from Disney property during those 10 months, but that's basically a rite of passage for these guys. And it's not like he had much respect for where he wasn't allowed to be in the first place.
Anything you want to say?
I'm going to Disney World.
So our boy is still missing. But there are still unaccounted for PayPal deposits on Patrick's account, so we don't yet know everything he stole. None of the deposits are anywhere close to what Buzzy has been valued at, but he had the means, the motive, and the accomplices. But the fact that he hasn't been charged with Buzzy's kidnapping does lead me to believe that there's something about this situation that hasn't been unraveled yet. And there are still questions that the investigation hasn't answered, like why Disney replaced Buzzy's clothes after Patrick stole them in August of 2018 instead of waiting until he was archived to give him a makeover. What are the other items he stole and sold? And why didn't Disney have better security after the first time Patrick stole from Cranium Command? Maybe they did, and that's why he had to finish the job during Food and Wine. There were also lingering questions about some random inaccuracies in the initial police report. They reported Buzzy's clothes stolen but listed his brown bomber jacket as red for some reason. They also incorrectly reported his hands were stolen at the same time when in fact the coverings for his hands had been taken off sometime before then. Why is their information inaccurate? They're the cops. I can't imagine Disney giving them bad information. Maybe they were allowed to examine the crime scene and whoever was taking notes made some inaccurate assumptions and is also colorblind? Hopefully the sheriff's department will be able to track down whoever else paid Patrick for stolen goods. Or on the off chance this is the one Disney heist he wasn't involved in, find some other way to track down the rich sicko who wants Buzzy all to himself. Because there's no way that person can claim, "Oh, I had no idea it was stolen." Not this time. So unless Patrick really did cut our boy's face off, scratch the eye paint off, and dump the body somewhere, we'll find him eventually. Most likely this was a mold because there isn't any paint on it, and it seems like Patrick's goal here was to make money off his hobby as a theme park provocateur/criminal. It's much harder to cash in off your biggest score if you cut his face off and scratch his eyes out just to send a message. Why he chose to send the message, "I'm guilty, what are you chumps gonna do about it?" is another thing we may never know. That's just a dumb move whether he was actually guilty or not. And while he's clearly the most obvious suspect, I almost don't want it to be him. I want a heist of this magnitude to have required the world's greatest criminal mind, and Patrick Spikes ain't it. Oh, he's a criminal alright, but not a mastermind. I want a cooler villain for this story. But he has taken every step to make himself look as guilty as possible, I swear. He's admitted to numerous other thefts, just not this one. So with one thief convicted, but no proof that he escalated to Grand Theft Audio animatronic, the case remains unsolved.